Debbie, I was just saying, wishing everybody a happy new year. We're excited to have everybody online with us and back. It's been a few weeks,
Yes,
so happy new year to you and the team as well.
exactly. Yeah. Here we go. January 2024, right?
Thrilled to have you back. Yep, absolutely. So we've got slides. We're ready to rock and roll. Debbie, again, thanks for being with us. I know your
You're
schedule
welcome.
is extremely busy. I know you just got off of another webinar, and so we're just privileged to have you. And really love this topic. This is something you and I talked about last month in December, and excited to get into it. So I know we only got about 30 minutes in. Let's dive in.
You got it. All right, everyone, welcome. Yeah, today we're going to talk about understanding how your personality impacts your business. And go ahead. Sean, you're flipping the slides for me today.
Yep, I'm
Perfect.
driving today. Yep.
All right. So just a little background. You guys many of you have met me, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Forward Coaching, sold real estate here in LA, Orange County for 16 years. But whenever I think of sales versatility, the phrase that always comes to my mind, Sean, is chameleon-like. And I remember I was like 9 years old and I'd saved up all my allowance, and we went to a circus and they were selling actual chameleons, those little lizards. And the whole thing on the sign was about how they changed color to match whatever you were wearing. And I had this plaid shirt and I was so excited to see this plaid lizard. And I was so disappointed when that didn't actually happen after I spent all my allowance, right? But I think about it when I think of fabulous salespeople have mastered the art of sales versatility, which is not phony, it's not manipulative, it's meeting their people where they're at. Because, have you ever noticed, and Sean, you may have noticed this too, I'm sure, that certain people you connect with so easily, certain clients are just easy for you to work with, and then others just make you crazy. And Chris Voss, who wrote the book Never Split the Difference, he's that amazing ex-FBI hostage negotiator that now teaches negotiations at Harvard Business School and everywhere else. Chris says if you think your client is crazy, probably they're not. You just don't understand them, right? So we're not going to spend a lot of time today on the personality of others. We're going to talk a little bit more about how your own personality, our own personality, can help us or harm us in our communications. And I'm going to let you flip the slides for me, Sean. So have you ever had a transaction or opportunity fall apart because you actually said the wrong thing at the wrong time? Now, Sean, an example, I am a 90-90 personality, okay? Now, lots of people think they want to be a high D. Well, there are some good things about high D people. We get things done, action-oriented, we're not shy, but we're also bossy. And we can be impatient, and we can be harsh and abrupt. And maybe Sean is, concerned about the negotiation on his home. And I say, Sean, this is the best offer you're going to get. You just need to sign it. Stop wasting time. Well, then he gets mad and the whole thing falls apart, right? Because I have to be aware that while I want to be extremely bossy and direct, that may not work for Sean. So I think of it as adjusting my thermostat to get in sync with that client or customer.
Debbie, I'm chuckling because I really struggled with this early in my career, and I just thought everybody was like me, well, Heidi as well, and people aren't, right?
No.
And so this is one of my favorite topics, and you'll see me chuckling the whole time because
I know.
I think we all have scar tissue from this, right? We just don't
Sure.
think everybody communicates the way we do, and we know they don't. And this is a great topic for all of us.
Well, you say we know that they don't, and yet some of you who might be newer to the real estate business, none of us had this training, and maybe a few of you, but I certainly didn't before I got into real estate. So unless you're told about this, and unless you're aware, and unless you're consciously thinking of it, you will not adapt. because it's just easier to roll the way we roll. So as I'm listening to my buyer or seller and I'm picking up their personality style and I'm listening to how they talk, do they talk soft? Do they talk fast? And they're very analytical. And I think, ooh, they're super analytical. I need to give them data. So my ability to adapt, which is not being phony, just think of it simply as speaking their language. See, Sean, if you spoke French and no English, and I spoke a little bit of French, then I would be bridging that gap by trying to speak your language. It might be a little bumpy. It might not be perfect, but you know what? It's going to be better because I'm trying to connect with you, if that makes
Great
sense.
analogy.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yep.
So 50%, this is a very, very scary stat. 50% of the opportunities you lose or the conflicts that you have are because you were not in rapport. 50%. Have you ever had that happen though, where you went on a listing appointment and you're like, I know I'm the best person for the job, and you did a stellar presentation, but they didn't choose you. They chose somebody else. You're like, what? That they don't even have my credentials. Why?
That's right. Yep.
Maybe you weren't in rapport. So let's take an example, because as a high D, my kryptonite, if you will, my polar opposite would be a high S. Not because there's anything wrong with them. It's just they're so opposite of me, sweet and calm and amiable, and they need time and they need a relationship. So if I knocked on the door, home seller opens the door, they're high S, I'm high D. Hey, let's get to work. I don't need to see your home because I've sold dozens of this model. Let's sit down, sign the listing. I can get this done for you. See, that's what I want to do. But I have to really, really tell myself, calm down, slow down. Mr. Seller, would you show me through your home? Tell me, what's important for you about this move? How are you feeling about it? What are your expectations of the agent you will choose? See, if there's not persuasion, if there's not rapport, then they're not likely to work with me, right? So without rapport, without trust, they're not likely to move forward. So when you're working with others, I know that we are all 4 styles, all a combo. Just look for the clues to their high style. I have a friend of mine, he owns a huge company, and he has this really bad habit. He says, look it, and he points his finger, look it. Well, first of all, that's rude and bossy, as I always tell him. But if I tell a high D, look it, they get really mad. They might bite my finger off. If I tell a high S, look it, they get really scared and intimidated. So I got to spot the high style, look for the clues, make notes in my CRM, make notes in my file, so that whenever I'm in the middle of a negotiation and I open that file up to speak to that client, I'm adapting to how they want to communicate. And Sean, as we change slides to the next one, we should remind ourselves too that this does not only apply to your buyer or seller. You should be using your MAD skills of versatility with all of the agents you interact with, your vendors, your affiliates. You need to be the gracious one, the calm, cool head in the deal, and the one that has the ability to navigate all the dramas and personalities, which means we have to be aware of how we communicate with each and every person. So
No question. This also helps us just become the professional that we're always trying to be, right? And when you say
right.
calm, and the calm in the storm is what we're looking for in this industry, and becoming that true professional. And so, Debbie, you and I talk about DISC a lot, but there's a lot
Yes,
of people out there that don't understand it. And here's a slide to kind of start with
it does.
helping them
And
with
by
the
the way,
vernacular.
They're always welcome to have access to our DISC assessment totally for free. You can go to the main Forward Coaching website, just forwardcoaching.com. You'll see it there as free resources. Sean, you're welcome to put it on the Landvoice platform too. Stephanie can help you with that. And please use it a lot. Okay. Now I know we can't ask our buyer and seller to take it, but you could all take it. To Rita's point, you could have your husband take it, your daughter take it, your friends take it. The more time you spend paying attention to this, the likelihood that you will utilize it in business will be greater. So how do you spot a high D? Okay. And I'll give you an example here, Rob, to your question. A high D is very direct. Each style speaks differently. So let's go back a slide, Sean, to that
Yep.
where we were. Oops, nope, there we are. High D, they'll say things like, cut to the chase. Give me the bottom line. I want the meeting to be brief. This is what I want. This is what I need.
Give me the executive version, Debbie.
Yeah,
right?
that is a high D. High I, grandiose language. Grandiose language is dramatic language. Oh my gosh, I am losing my mind over this transaction. It is literally driving me crazy. That's a high I. Nobody else talks like that. High S, soft-spoken, very calm, a little bit on the timid side, don't want to rock the boat. They'll often say things about, I don't want anyone to be unhappy. I hope this is okay. I'm worried about this. They need approval. They need reassurance. Now your high C, they can also be quiet, but it's a little chilly, a little withdrawn often. And they're going to ask for things that are data driven. I need a report. I need some stats. I need to see the proof of. Now, here's another tip. Ask them what they do for a living. Sometimes that's very telling. Not always, but usually. So if they're a rocket scientist, what are they, guys? Right? If they're a teacher, what do you think? Well, you could say, well, maybe high C. Okay, but what do they teach? Well, they run the drama department. Ah, then that's going to be a high I. Lots of CEOs of companies are high D and high C. So see, if you listen to them speak, you ask what they do for a living. If you see them in person, you see how they're dressed. If they have a very low-key, almost Gap attire, maybe high S. If they're wearing leopard print, high I, right? And then when you go to their home in the garage, if they've painted outlines of all of their tools and have those perfectly organized, you got a high C. So you just think of people like a puzzle, right? And you have fun putting all those pieces together so you understand them. Okay.
Debbie, real quick, we're getting the question, where do they do this test again? So if they go to Forward Coaching, there's a link there.
Just go to just Google forwardcoaching.com and you go to free resources. Now, when you, thank you for that, Chad. When you
Thanks, Chad.
go to Forward Coaching and you take that assessment, so here's how you do it. And anyone you instruct to do it, staff, team agents, first of all, tell them it is not a hard test. It is not a test. There's no right or wrong. It's an assessment. They should not do it. You should not do it when you're tired or anxious. And it should not take more than 10 minutes. If it does, you're overthinking your answers. And just answer instinctively. And it's amazing with these simple questions how it will accurately peg you. Then you will immediately get sent a report, and that report comes from Intermetrics, which is where I license the rights to this. So it might go to your spam. Just look for it within a minute. It should be sitting there, though, in your inbox. And it's going to give you a 25-page report all about you. Read it. Learn about yourself. And a couple of my favorite pages, page 13 to 21. Those are my favorite, but there's a page, how you could be more effective. And the other is areas for improvement. So those 2 pages, I think, are very powerful in helping us realize where we might have some gaps in communicating with others.
Debbie, I also love spouses, partners, teenagers. Like, have them take it. This is an amazing way just to communicate within a family or in a business or any type of relationship.
Sure. And Cynthia, we are all more than one type of personality. So when you take the DISC assessment, you're going to see D for driver. I'm a 99D. I for influencer. I'm 67I. S for steady, calm. I think of it as sweet. I think I'm like 13. So that's not. And then the C, I also happen to be a pretty high C. I think I'm like 72 or so in the C. But think about that. I'm the CEO of a company, right? That kind of makes sense. You guys have heard how I talk. And in the I, my I goes up on the adapted, because there's the natural style. That's who you are when you're comfortable. The adapted gray bar next to your natural style is who you are under pressure or being watched or observed, or it's showtime. So lots of people think I'm a really high I because I do all this stuff. No, that's showtime. That's my adapted I. So when you look at your natural style, that's you when you're very comfortable. The adapted is you when you're on an appointment, for an example. So, Sean, it could be that they're a fairly high D, but on their adapted D, it drops way down, which might mean at a listing appointment, they become a lot more timid. And as a coach, the reason at Forward, everyone we coach, we have take the DISC assessment, because that will tell me where they will struggle, or they might not close, or they might have problems communicating with clients. So that's why I just, live by this DISC assessment. It's so critical. Okay, next
How
slide.
we show. Yep.
Each style speaks differently. Each will have different expressions or gestures. High D will be very flatline. They can be a little bit unnerving, because when you're meeting with them, they don't show a lot of emotion. High I will be all over the place. And high S will be, they smile. Like, I can pick a high S person out in a room because they're so smiling. Oh, you go, girl. Just so much approval on their face. High C will actually frown when you're speaking with them, and you might think that means they don't like you or they don't like the information. But a high C will often frown as they're taking it in. They're not even aware that they're doing it, right? So they all have their different gestures. It's pretty fascinating. So they're a puzzle. Just think of it like that. I'm going to dump all the pieces. I may not get it perfect, but you know what? I'm going to get it closer. And I'm going to do my best to adjust that thermostat to give that customer the comfort with me that they can now feel I get them, we have rapport, and they can make a decision. So it's a lot of work, right? But the more you practice it, and it really is fun. When my daughters were really young, we would go out to dinner, or we'd be sitting by the pool on vacation. And I would always say, well, okay, so what personality style do you think that person is? And we would take it apart and study it. And we'd practice asking them questions about themselves to see how we could get them to talk and build rapport. I just think it's a life skill. It's not just a sales skill. So do your research. Culture and age will also factor into how they prefer to be communicated with. There's actually a book, I found it at Barnes & Noble. I can't remember the author, but it's called Cross-Cultural Selling for Dummies. And it's one of those little, yellow and black books, easy to read, really good book. And it took the different cultures in the world and gave a chapter on some crib notes on how to negotiate and how to work with that culture. But the thing that's important to know, the point they made in the book, is culture is not about race or last name. It's environment. So for an example, my husband is 100% Dutch, but he's never been to Holland. Sadly, we need to fix that. But he was born in America. He's never lived in Holland. He does not operate in the Dutch culture. He operates in the American culture. However, if someone just moved here from Japan a week ago, they're going to do business in the Japanese way, in the Japanese culture. If we don't adapt to that, if we don't understand that, we could do things that would offend them. We could also do things that would create stress for them and stress for ourselves. So for example, in the Japanese culture, if that person handed me a business card and I happened to take it and write a note on it, so offensive to them, so offensive. Also, some of us were taught, oh, you look them in the eye, firm handshake. If I'm working with that person who is of Japanese culture, they would not want that. That is not a way of communicating in Japan. Now, then if we think about age, so many of you are the generation that loves to text versus speaking. And yet the boomers and the matures and the baby boomers, which are like 50-ish, to Mick Jagger's age, they prefer eye to eye or ear to ear communication when it comes to their money. That's not because they can't use technology. It's just when it gets to the nitty gritty, that's what they prefer. So it is personality, but it's also culture and age. Can you
Debbie,
imagine? Oh, go
sorry
right
to
ahead.
interrupt. We had one question about the book. You got to drop the name of the book again that you quoted earlier.
Cross-cultural selling for dummies. Little yellow and black book, Google Barnes and Noble. I'm sure it'll pop up. So here's a fun story, the Josh story. Josh Altman, $1 million listing. Some of you have watched the show. We know Josh. My daughter is actually TC for his team. And so most of those stories are pretend, right? But there was a good one that showed a good example of his wife. Josh came out in his three-piece suit and tie, ready to go out on a listing appointment. And his wife stopped him and said, wait a minute, you're not going on a listing appointment in Beverly Hills. You're going to Manhattan Beach. People don't dress like that at the beach. And Josh thought about it for a minute, went in, changed, put on jeans and a nice polo. Josh shows up at the house, rings the doorbell at this high rise on the water. Seller opens the door, and the seller is wearing a three-piece suit and a tie. And the seller looks at Josh and says, is that how you dress to take a multi-million-dollar listing? Broken rapport right away. So what did Josh and his wife do wrong? They assumed that where the property was located indicated what that seller would be like in terms of their culture, right? They did not actually research that seller. If they had researched the seller, they later found out the seller was a banker. The seller owned banks all across the world, owned multiple properties across the world, had purchased this property and had never even used the property, and now is selling. So the seller is not a surf dude, right? He's a banker. So a little bit of research and he would have got it right. Yeah, John says he remembers that episode. Yeah, don't listen to your wife, right? So if you don't adapt and sell them the way they want to be sold, you'll miss massive opportunity. But you know what? You'll also have to work twice as hard, because that means that half of the people you meet won't be a match for you. because odds are we can usually get along pretty well with about half, and the other half are difficult. So just as we said before, analyze in the beginning, take some notes so that you'll remind yourself, because your go-to in a busy or stressful moment is going to be to revert to your own style and your own way of doing things. So that's why it's important to take some notes and then just refer to them before any meeting. Now, if you're having staff, team agents, family take the disc, and you're actually going to be able to have a copy of that report, there's a very cool page in there, page 19. Page 19 gives you the do's and don'ts of how to communicate with that person. When my daughter Erica was in high school and took the disc, and the report said, when you're communicating with her, don't give her verbal instructions, put them in writing. So then I would do something like write a note, honey, if you don't clean your room before Saturday, when the housekeeper comes, I will have her do it, and I will charge you out of your allowance. Love, Mom. And then I get a note on my mirror. Okay, Mom, got it, will do. But if I told her she didn't do it, right? So page 19 is cool. If you're working with people in your world, I would refer to that before a very important meeting. Okay. So quickly, we'll hit these fast, Sean. Working with a high D, let them feel they have control. Ask permission before confronting. Do not interrupt them. They won't like it. When working with a high I, next slide, let them talk. Be patient with the fact that they may be late and unorganized, and they may get dramatic, like they may panic and get excitable, but they cool down pretty quickly. Okay. When you're working with a high S, slow down, calm down, draw them out with well-prepared questions, be patient, close them, but close them calmly and carefully. Think iron fist and a velvet glove. High C, keep it factual and on point. Be extremely well organized and well prepared. Remember, if you don't give them the data they need, they will not likely make a decision. Okay, so selling's an art, and understanding people is an art. And you're going to discover when you embrace this, sell them the way they want to be sold, everything becomes much easier, right? So, Sean, I know we went quickly today. It's such a big topic.
Time went fast. Yep.
Yeah, and I think if you go one more slide, maybe we have my how to contact me. Yep. So, guys, if you are thinking I need some coaching around this, you can go to that QR code, have a complimentary business strategy call with me. We'll talk about that. No contract here, no pressure. But also, after you take your DISC assessment, if you have a question for me, just email me, Debbie@forwardcoaching.com. And Sean, are they going to be able to get a copy of this recording?
Yeah, two things. We're going to send this out to everyone. We'll also be putting it on the Landvoice YouTube page early next week. Usually by Tuesday, you'll see it there. So go ahead and subscribe to the page, and you'll get these training videos that we're doing with Debbie twice a month.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right, guys, well, have some fun with this. It's fascinating. And, if you're going to have a party with family this weekend and you have boring family, have them all take their disc and bring it to the party, and you'll have lots of fun. All right, guys, have a great weekend.
Thanks, Debbie.
Bye-bye.